Did you miss the central bank governor's speech last weekend about the banking sector, microcredit industry, talking about the new microfinance bank? The central bank governor, Godwin Emefiele, was a little bit upset and unhappy that banks are not transmitting credit as fast and as big as enough into the private sector, in particular the small and medium enterprises. So the idea was for the central bank to partner with NIPOST and the Bankers Committee to set up a new microfinance bank and to bring initial 5 billion naira out of the Agric and the Agric and SMEs fund. That fund holds about 60 billion naira currently with the central bank. So that's where the money is coming from to flow to the new microfinance bank. This is for the MSMEs, basically, and those who are in the Agricultural Borrowers Program. So what really has been the issue with using the traditional microfinance banks? How do we de-risk the risks within that space? Let's get Celestine Okeke, who is the lead partner at CEDI, is live to us from our Abuja studios. Good morning, Celestine. It's good to have you on the program. Thank you very much for coming through.
Good morning, Bosna. Thank you for having me once again.
We appreciate your time. Give us a sense of the credit market in Nigeria for SMEs. Of course, at the federal government level, the government is trying to do a few things with what you call the executive orders relating to how to ease credit into the MSMEs. These executive orders are already there. But cash, or what you call funding, which is money, is always an issue here. So what's the situation from your point of view? You work on SMEs.
Okay, but I will start by saying we often miss the micro part of the entire conversation. What we have is micro, small, and medium enterprises, not just SMEs. There's a report in 2012 published by Elfina, which states that we have, of the micro, small, medium enterprises sector, the micro constitutes 98% of the total number of small businesses in Nigeria, which means we have 98% micro enterprises, then 2% small and medium. So let's always factor in the micro part of it, because what we have essentially are micro enterprises. Now, back to your question and the introduction you did. We need to bear in mind the fact that over the years, let's even say in the last 5 years alone, we have launched over 5 different interventions for MSMEs in Nigeria. We've had the Agricultural Credit Guarantee Scheme, Commercial Agri Guarantee Scheme, we had the 220 billion MSME funding, we had the Yes Deep from BOI, and so many of them. We also have the Small Medium Enterprises Guarantee Scheme, Industrial Sector Guarantee Scheme. So it's not entirely a function of whether there are funding interventions for MSMEs, but it's a function of the fact that MSMEs are not primed to be able to access these funding interventions. And I'll give a little background to that if you would allow me. The culture of entrepreneurship in Nigeria is not deep. We are not producing entrepreneurs who are taking on opportunities. We are producing those who are taking on a survival instinct, a need to survive, who are Me Too entrepreneurs. So if you see in the last 3 years, shawarma became a big business in Nigeria. And for every major street you go into, you would find 1 or 2 shawarma joints coming up. In the last 2 years, cake business became a big thing in Nigeria. For every corner you go to, there's a cake producer in that place. So what it tells you is there are people are taking on to entrepreneurship as a means of survival, not taking on opportunities that they clearly have identified and they're working to improve on. So these persons become entrepreneurs, and they don't know the basic and fundamental things they need to know about entrepreneurship. So when it then gets to accessing finance, there are always certain things the banks are requesting for they don't even know of, like collateral, keeping your books straight. These informations are not grounded for entrepreneurs. So in wrapping up my answer to your question, we don't need several interventions. We don't need a national microfinance bank. What we need is to go back to the drawing board and ask ourselves the question, why have we not done more than 20% for all of the interventions we have launched in the last 5 years? If we answer that question, it will give us an idea as to what we need to do to open that space.
Celeste, the banks have the deep pockets, so they've contributed part of their what you call their profit and all of that. And it's good to say, look, these guys have a nice heart, so I'm going to play that for them, that, okay, they're very nice. Let's set up this money. They voluntarily do some of those things. But transmitting it to the hands of ordinary Nigerians. But let's also talk about those who are traditional entrepreneurs, like the vulcanizer by the roadside, those who are doing traditional restaurant, whatever, been doing this for decades and what have you. They need this money. So we set up the microfinance banks to do interventions at the bottom of the pyramid. What's the experience here, very briefly?
Okay, very briefly, I will say this. We have focused so much on offering financial assistance, financial services to micro, small, medium enterprises, forgetting the non-financial side of it. So you talked about the vulcanizer by the roadside, the bucatera woman on the roadside. And the question I would then ask is, these micro entrepreneurs, have they ever had access to, say, SMEDAN, which is tasked with developing small and medium enterprises? Have they had access with, say, NDE, who is also tasked with youth employment and job creation? At what point are we helping these micro entrepreneurs to be able to scale, sustain, and become small businesses and move from being small to medium enterprises? We are not doing any of that. So these guys have remained at the same spot where they started from, running with the same knowledge they have been running with in the last 5, 6, 7 years, and are often not even aware of what requirements bank will place on them when they go to access funding. So there is a need for us to do a mix of non-financial and financial support from MSMEs. If we focus so much on the financial support, we will keep launching several interventions that the MSMEs are not prepared, are not equipped to be able to access. So we need to do a mix of financial and non-financial, help them to understand what it takes to start a business, sustain and scale that business, help them to understand what financial literacy is all about, how to keep their books, how to manage their profits. If they're able to do that, they will then on their own know that they can move from being micro to be small and be big. But if you leave them at the spot where they are, they run their businesses with the same knowledge they use in starting, which doesn't work. So the task is for agencies like SMEDAN to begin to look at how do we help MSMEs to migrate from being micro to small. And before they can migrate, they need to have learned so many things that will prepare them for the next phase of entrepreneurship, but it's not happening. So when you launch intervention, the people you are launching it for sometimes are not even aware they need to scale their enterprises. Some other times they are aware, but they don't know what to do. And thirdly, they are not integrated in the process of launching this intervention. So when you launch it, you are not taking into consideration the fact that 98% of the small businesses will have are micro entrepreneurs. So your guideline is tilted towards small and medium enterprises. When the micros go there, they find it difficult to read your application form.